Okay, Alan, on to more serious things. The
Yeah.
province's main areas of delivery are education and health, and we know that there have been significant challenges trying to keep up and perhaps improve the services that are delivered in those two areas. And there's been a shortage of money for hospital staff, a shortage of money for teachers. There have been job cuts and so on. How does yesterday's budget, when it pertains to provincial funding, affect what the province is trying to do in education and health?
So, of course, I mean, what the minister is really trying to do is fund some extra money for education and health. So, of course, we want our fair share of the money. That is really critical. But, of course, how do you get that extra money when you don't have economic growth, when you have reached your ceiling on borrowing? And so these are where the tough choices have to be made. And I personally think that they should have made different choices and harder choices at the beginning. And I heard you speaking earlier about, party politics and people talking about the next election. But we're right at the very beginning of a very new environment with a coalition government where we have to find each other. It's about negotiated settlements. But it's also about saying this term, we need to take the hard choices right up front. That's the best time to do it. I mean, there should have been, I think there should have been much harder policy statements. Of course, I don't agree with the VAT, etc., but I think it should have been, we will not in future allow for salary increases above inflation rate. That must be a policy position. We should start to cut the number of SOEs. I mean, we've got more than 600 SOEs in our country. Some of those are not necessary. We've got to make those hard choices. I would have liked to see more, and I'm grateful that there's more money going to SARS, because I think Ed Kisbesa has been talking about this for a long time. There is some more money out there. Give them the money. Go and get it. But what about corruption? Because we still lose a lot of money to corruption. So I would have liked to see harder choices there.
But
But for
if
us,
we can in the time that we have left, concentrate on
okay,
what
what
is
about
there
us?
and the impact on education and health in the Western Cape.
Okay, so for the first time ever, and I met with some of our Treasury officials and our minister this morning, and for the first time ever, we have got to go and put our budget on the table, and we do not have an allocation letter from Treasury. Because I suppose last-minute negotiations, number one. But we do have an allocation letter from the previous budget, which didn't include or can show us that there's if there was no funding for that extra money, we're going to take that as a baseline. Because remember, our budget allocation was before he announced a VAT increase. And so we're going to take that in our budget as our baseline. We hope that we get the extra money, and whatever happens in the negotiation in Parliament, because normally budgets are not negotiated in Parliament, it's a given. So we're going to budget according to our current allocation letter without the promise of extra money for education and health, which is going to be really tough. We're going to use that in our budget. And then if we manage through the parliamentary process to get the extra money, which for us is probably going to be about an extra somewhere between 600 and 800 million rand for health, which is desperately needed in our province. We will then run a secondary adjustment straight afterwards to enable us to put it into the system. But we just have to make a decision now. So our budget must go on our original allocation letter for the next year and 3 years. And so, we are kind of in very new territory, budgeting with a lot of uncertainty. So we're rather going to be conservative in our system, and then hopefully through that parliamentary process we do get some extra money.
The allocation letter that you're working from, is that the allocation letter related to the budget speech which wasn't delivered yesterday 3 weeks ago?
No.
No, so it goes back to the medium-term budget statement.
Correct. So remember, to get to the budget that wasn't delivered, it's a process. We go through discussions in November. We ourselves at a national level go through those discussions. We then have our own budget processes where we bring in all the departments. They must tell us what they're going to be doing over the next 3 years. We then start to shift money around. We do it again, and then we negotiate and talk to national again. We then do it again in January. And then just before the budget, they gave us allocation letters. And that budget was primarily the budget speech minus the 60 billion, remember it was going to be 60 billion extra funded by a 2% VAT increase. So the allocation letter talks to all of that tabled budget minus the 60 billion and the VAT, because we didn't know anything about that. And that is the last current budget letter that we've got. So we are now going to run on that letter. And then hopefully, which is now 40 billion extra instead of 60 billion because of, all the movement of a lesser VAT increase and also reduction. If you look at the first budget that never happened and the second document, you'll also see there's a reduction in pensions. There's a reduction in some of the grant numbers. They've actually dropped some of those as well. So it's not only just going to make it more expensive from a VAT point of view for poor and middle class. The most vulnerable are actually going to get slightly less than originally thought, because they were trying to find that extra money. But we're not going to bank on that. We are going to bank on the baseline of the previous allocation letter. That will be our budget. We'll work on that, and hopefully through the negotiation over the next couple of weeks that we do find a little bit extra for us.
It's nice to know that there is a potential upside. It's not a certain upside, Alan, but there is a potential upside, which will still leave you with less money than you would like to offer the kinds of services that the citizens of the province want and deserve. But it's nice to know that there is a potential upside. Thank you very much for explaining that to us, Alan Winde.